My husband's secret life destroyed our marriage. Then I got the perfect revenge. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. It was a Wednesday afternoon, ordinary, boring, unremarkable, until my laptop screen lit up with a notification I was never meant to see. A shared account alert. For months, I'd been using our joint email for family bills, travel bookings, the occasional coupon code. But this message wasn't from the electric company or an airline. It was from someone named Sophie. The subject line read, "Last night, Red Heart." I clicked before I could think. There she was, a woman I'd never seen before, posing in nothing but a silk robe in a dimly lit hotel room. The message underneath was short, almost casual. "You forgot your tie here. Again. Same time next week." My chest tightened. My ears rang. I couldn't breathe. I stared at the photo until the screen dimmed, my own reflection staring back at me. Eyes wide, mouth open, like I'd been punched. A memory surfaced. Last Thursday, he'd said he was working late. Even kissed my forehead before heading out. I'd made him coffee when he got home, thinking I was supporting his career. Supporting us. I forwarded the email to myself, heart pounding, then clicked through the inbox. Dozens of messages. Different dates. Different hotels. Sophie wasn't just a fling, she was a habit. And judging by the timestamps, a priority. But then, something else. A different email chain. Hidden under a generic subject line, client update. It wasn't about business at all, it was about accounts. Offshore ones. Money I didn't know existed. Transactions to names I didn't recognize. The shock of the affair was already gutting me. But this was something else. Something bigger. I sat there, the taste of bile in my mouth, realizing my husband wasn't just unfaithful. He was living an entire life I knew nothing about. And then my phone buzzed. It was him. A text. "Hey, love. Can you transfer $5,000 to my business account today? Don't ask questions. It's urgent." I stared at the screen, trembling. For the first time, I didn't respond. For the first time, I thought, maybe I don't have to be the one blindsided anymore. That's when my plans started to form. But before I could move, another email came in, from Sophie again. "You left your wedding ring here. Should I keep it safe until Friday?" I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that silk robe, that smirk, that ring. My husband's ring. The same one he slid onto my finger at our wedding, swearing he'd love me until death. By morning, the rage had burned hot enough to harden into something else. Calm, sharp, dangerous. If he thought I'd just cry quietly in the corner, he didn't know me at all. I started small. I logged into our bank accounts, scrolling back months, even years. The $5,000 transfer he asked for was nothing compared to the tens of thousands that had already been funneled into business expenses and client gifts. All of it leading to a separate account I had never seen before. At 9:15 a.m., after he left for a breakfast meeting, I pulled open his desk drawer. I'd cleaned this desk 100 times, but I'd never opened the small lockbox tucked at the back. Today I did. Inside was a burner phone, and on it, text to Sophie, sure, but also to another woman. Erica. Different tone, different pet names. My stomach churned. This wasn't just an affair. It was an entire network of lies. Still, I didn't confront him. Not yet. Confrontation would give him a chance to explain, twist, and gaslight me. I needed proof, irrefutable, undeniable proof, before I made my move. I bought a tiny voice recorder online, expedited shipping. While I waited for it to arrive, I called an old college friend, Noah, who now worked as a private investigator. I'd helped him through a rough breakup years ago. Maybe it was time to call in that favor. When I told him I suspected an affair, he chuckled darkly. "Affairs are easy to prove," he said. "The real question is, do you want to know everything he's hiding?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I want everything." That night, when my husband came home smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine, I smiled, kissed his cheek, and poured him a glass of wine. Because the truth was, he had no idea I'd already started dismantling his perfect little double life. And 2 days later, Noah sent me the first photo. It wasn't Sophie. It wasn't Erica. It was someone else entirely. The photo Noah sent me landed in my inbox at 2:13 a.m. It showed my husband stepping out of a sleek black car, holding the door for a woman I had never seen before. Tall, elegant, early 30s maybe, wearing a red coat that looked like it belonged in a magazine ad. They weren't holding hands, but the way she tilted her head toward him, like they'd just shared a secret, made my blood run cold. The timestamp was from last Thursday, the night he told me he was working late to finalize a deal. I stared at that picture for an hour before I could even type a reply to Noah. Me, who is she? Noah, working on it. But your husband, he's busy. And not just romantically. The next morning, Noah called me. His voice was different, lower, more serious. Look, I've tailed a lot of cheaters. But your husband isn't just cheating. He's meeting with people you don't want to cross. I pressed him for details, but he wouldn't say more until we met in person. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop 2 towns over. I felt like a spy walking in, scanning the room before sitting down. Noah slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were photos, receipts, and notes. Dinner dates with Sophie. Weekend getaways with Erica. And with the woman in the red coat? Hotel meetings, always under a false name. But the real gut punch wasn't the affairs. It was the receipts from cash withdrawals, $10,000 at a time, deposited into an offshore account. Noah leaned in. That account isn't in his name. It's in hers. Who is she? I whispered. He looked at me, grim. Her name is Camila Vargas. And if my sources are right, she's connected to a money laundering ring. My stomach dropped. Affairs were one thing. But this was dangerous. I wasn't just dealing with betrayal anymore. I was sitting on a ticking bomb. I went home that night, smiled at my husband over dinner, and pretended everything was fine. But under the table, my phone buzzed with a new message from Noah. Noah, Camila's not just involved. She's his business partner. And tomorrow, they're meeting again. I parked my car 2 blocks away from the upscale hotel Noah had mentioned. The kind of place with doormen in pressed uniforms and chandeliers in the lobby. It was raining, the kind of steady drizzle that made everything look a little blurred, like the universe was giving me plausible deniability. I wore a baseball cap, my hair tucked in, and a plain black coat. My heart was pounding so loud I was afraid people could hear it. From my seat at the cafe across the street, I had a clear view of the entrance. At exactly 7:15 p.m., my husband's black car pulled up. He stepped out, checking his watch. And then she appeared, Camila Vargas. The red coat was gone. Tonight she wore a fitted navy dress that screamed power. They didn't touch, but they moved together like they'd been doing this for years. He held the door for her, the same old gentleman act he used to charm me with when we first met. Noah's words echoed in my head. Money laundering ring. I waited a full 10 minutes before following, slipping into the lobby behind a small group of tourists. They didn't head for the restaurant. They went straight to the elevator, swiping a card to access the top floors. My pulse quickened. Noah had prepared me for this. He'd given me a tiny wireless mic disguised as a keychain. I crept into the service elevator and got out 1 floor below theirs. I found the suite number and pressed my ear to the door. Muffled voices. Laughter. Then my husband's voice. Calm. Confident. Like he wasn't discussing something criminal. And then Camila's voice. Once this next transfer clears, we can cut ties with the suppliers and disappear. Your wife won't suspect a thing. The blood drained from my face. He chuckled. She's too naive to ever figure it out. Something in me snapped right then. Naive? Maybe once. Not anymore. I was about to step away when I heard a third voice in the room. A man's, deep and sharp. We have a problem. Someone's been asking questions about you. There was silence. And then my husband said my name. My stomach lurched. Hearing my name in that room was like having ice water poured straight into my veins. I pressed my back against the wall, willing myself to disappear. Camila's voice sharpened. Are you sure? The unknown man replied. Positive. Someone was at your office yesterday, asking about the real estate transfers. Said she was a friend of yours. There was a pause. I could picture my husband's expression, calculated, calm, eyes narrowing just slightly. She wouldn't dare, he said finally, though the doubt in his tone betrayed him. I needed to move. Every instinct screamed at me to get out before that door opened. The hallway felt endless as I crept toward the service stairs, my footsteps silent against the carpet. Halfway there, I heard the unmistakable sound of a door handle turning. My body froze. Check the hallway, the man's voice ordered. Panic surged, but I forced myself to keep walking at a casual pace, as if I belonged there. I reached the stairwell door and pushed it open slowly, praying the hinges wouldn't squeak. From behind, I heard footsteps, fast, purposeful. My pulse hammered in my ears as I descended the stairs 2 at a time. I didn't stop until I reached the ground floor, my breath ragged. I ducked into the ladies' room, locking myself in a stall. My hands trembled so violently I nearly dropped the mic keychain. Through the haze of adrenaline, one thing became crystal clear: they were onto me. And if they suspected I knew anything, they wouldn't just sit back and wait. I needed proof, something undeniable, something that could take them both down before they decided to silence me for good. And I knew exactly where to find it. By the time I got home, the decision was already made. If my husband had even the faintest suspicion I was digging, he'd start covering his tracks. That meant I had one small window to act. I went straight to his office. The air smelled faintly of his cologne, sharp, expensive, and suddenly nauseating. The desk was immaculate, as always, every pen perfectly aligned, every paper stacked with military precision. But I knew better. The real secrets were never in plain sight. The bottom right drawer had been locked for as long as I could remember. When I'd once asked about it, he'd smirked and said, "A man's allowed a little privacy, isn't he?" I knelt down, pulling the small velvet pouch from my pocket. Inside was a tension wrench and pick, tools my friend Mia had given me as a joke years ago when I got locked out of my jewelry box. I'd never thought I'd use them for this. The click of the lock releasing sent a jolt through me. Slowly, I slid the drawer open. Inside were neat folders, each labeled in his precise handwriting. The first was innocuous, tax records. The second, not so much. It was full of bank statements from accounts I'd never heard of, each with staggering deposits. The sources were vague: consulting fees, private transactions. And then I found it. A manila envelope, thick and heavy. I opened it to find dozens of photographs, my husband, with another woman, at different locations, expensive dinners, hotels, even at a beach resort I'd never been to. But it wasn't Camila. This woman was younger, striking, with a sly smile and eyes that seemed to know exactly what she was doing. There were also contracts, business deals with names I didn't recognize, but the numbers, millions. My blood ran cold as I realized this wasn't just infidelity. It was something much bigger. And then I saw the last page in the envelope, a list. At the very top was my name. Underneath, in all caps, one word: remove. I stared at that single word until the letters blurred. Remove. It wasn't just cold, it was calculated. Who writes something like that about their wife? A sick wave of dread crashed over me. Did he mean divorce? Ruin me financially? Or something worse? The photos, the secret accounts, the contracts, it all painted a picture of a man who wasn't just living a double life. He was operating in a world where people disappeared. My hands shook as I slid everything back into the drawer. I locked it, just as carefully as I'd opened it, my mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. When I walked out of his office, he was standing in the hallway. Home early. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah," I said, forcing my voice steady. Work was slow. He studied me for a moment too long. "You look pale. Everything all right?" I wanted to scream, to shove the envelope in his face and demand answers. Instead, I plastered on the fakest smile I'd ever worn. Just tired. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the house made me flinch. At 2 a.m., I heard the faint sound of his office door opening, then closing. My heart pounded in my ears as I lay frozen in bed, trying to slow my breathing. By morning, the drawer would be checked. He'd know I'd been there. But when I crept into the office at dawn, the drawer was still locked. Everything seemed untouched, except for one thing. On top of the desk sat the manila envelope. No lock, no drawer. Just sitting there, waiting for me. In red ink across the front was a new message. "We need to talk." My throat went dry as I stared at the envelope. The handwriting was his, sharp, deliberate strokes. He knew. He'd known the second I touched that drawer. I picked it up like it might explode. The paper inside was thick, almost like legal stationery. It wasn't a letter. It was a contract. My name was printed neatly at the top, followed by paragraphs of dense legal language. Halfway down, my eyes caught on the words: non-disclosure agreement and lifetime binding. He wanted me to sign away my right to talk about whatever the hell his secret life was. In exchange, there was a number, $500,000, wired to an account in my name. It was blood money. Morning. His voice came from behind me, low and calm. I spun around so fast I almost dropped the contract. He was leaning against the doorway, coffee in hand, like this was a casual chat before work. "You went through my things," he said. No accusation in his tone, just cold certainty. "I found things you never meant me to see." I shot back, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and fury. He walked closer, placing the coffee on the desk. "Sign it, and you walk away with enough to start fresh. Don't sign." He tilted his head slightly. "And you'll regret it." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact," he said simply. "You have until midnight." He walked out, leaving the smell of coffee and danger hanging in the air. I stared at the contract, my hands clenching. He thought money would buy my silence. By noon, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to sign. I was going to destroy him. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his smirk, the quiet confidence of a man who thought he was untouchable. If I was going to take him down, I needed more than a burner phone and a few suspicious bank statements. I needed a full picture of his hidden world. That's when I remembered the list. Months ago, I'd overheard him on the phone, rattling off a string of first names in a clipped tone, like a roll call. At the time, I thought it was a client list. Now I knew better. I went back to the drawer where I'd found the contract, feeling along the edges. A false panel clicked loose. Inside was a small leather notebook, its pages filled with neatly organized columns, names, dates, dollar amounts. Some names I recognized, people in his circle, business contacts, even one of our mutual friends. Others were complete strangers. The numbers next to them weren't small. Tens of thousands. Hundreds, in some cases. Blackmail? Payoffs? Bribes? One name jumped out at me. Carla M. The same name that had been on a cryptic wire transfer I'd spotted last week. I didn't know who she was, but my gut told me she was important. Maybe even the key. I snapped photos of every page, then slid the notebook back in place. My phone was now a ticking time bomb of evidence. By morning, I had a plan: track down Carla M., find out what she knew, and see if she hated him enough to talk. What I didn't expect was for her to already be looking for me. She found me first. It was just after noon when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, until the text came through. "We need to talk. It's about him." I called instantly. A woman's voice answered, low and tense. "Is this his wife?" she asked. My stomach tightened. "Who's asking?" "Carla," she said after a pause. "You don't know me, but I think we've both been lied to." We met at a small cafe on the edge of town. She looked nervous, her eyes darting to the door every few seconds. Her hands trembled as she stirred her coffee. "He told me he wasn't married," she began. "Said he was divorced. He promised me things. Money. A business deal. And when I tried to push him, he..." She broke off, swallowing hard. "He what?" I pressed. "He sent people to remind me to stay quiet." She slid an envelope across the table. Inside were photos, grainy shots of my husband with various people, cash-exchanging hands, him in places he claimed he'd never been. One photo was of the two of them together, laughing like they'd known each other for years. "This isn't just cheating," Carla whispered. "He's running something dirty. And if you found that notebook, then you know too much already." My blood ran cold. "How do you know about the notebook?" She gave a bitter laugh. "Because I helped him start it." Before I could ask more, she leaned in closer. "He's going to figure out you've been digging. And when he does, you won't be safe." Then she handed me a burner phone. "When he makes his next move," she said, "you call me." But as I walked out of that cafe, my real question wasn't whether I'd call her. It was whether I could trust her at all. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Carla's warning replayed in my head. "You won't be safe." By 2 a.m., I'd given up on rest and was sitting at the kitchen table with the notebook, flipping through pages of names, numbers, and cryptic codes. Some entries were marked with red stars, others underlined twice. My gut told me these were important, maybe even dangerous. That's when I heard it, a faint rattle from the back door. I froze, my ears straining. Another sound followed, a slow scrape of metal against metal. My breath caught in my throat. I moved quietly toward the noise, phone in hand, ready to call the police. But before I could, the door gave a soft click and swung open. A figure stepped inside. Tall, broad shoulders, hood pulled low over his face. "Hello?" My voice shook despite my effort to sound firm. The figure didn't answer, just turned toward me. The glint of something metallic in his hand caught the dim light. My instincts kicked in. I grabbed the heavy glass vase from the counter and hurled it. It smashed into the wall just inches from his head. He cursed under his breath and bolted, the back door slamming behind him. My hands trembled as I locked the door and called 911. The dispatcher promised an officer was on the way, but I could already hear the distant roar of an engine peeling away. When the police arrived, they searched the yard but found nothing. No footprints, no fingerprints, nothing out of place except my shattered vase. But when I went back to the kitchen, my heart dropped. The notebook was gone. The police officer took my statement, but his tone was skeptical. "Are you sure you didn't just misplace it?" he asked, pen tapping lazily against his notepad. I clenched my fists. I know what I saw, and I know the notebook was here. He gave me the kind of look people reserve for someone they think is overreacting, then promised they'd keep an eye out. I knew that meant nothing. By morning, a new envelope slid under my front door. No name, no return address, just my name scrawled in sharp black ink across the front. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Stop digging, or you'll end up like him." Below the words was a grainy photograph. David, sitting at some cafe I didn't recognize. His head was tilted toward a woman with platinum blonde hair, their faces too close to be casual. But it wasn't the intimacy that froze my blood. It was the date printed at the bottom, yesterday. David was supposed to be on a business trip 3 states away. I stared at the picture until my hands started to shake, anger mixing with something sharper, fear. Whoever sent this wasn't just warning me, they were watching him. And me. I dialed his number. Straight to voicemail. Again and again. Then my phone buzzed with a new text from an unknown number. "If you want the truth, meet me tonight. Alone." The address in the text led me to an old industrial district, half the buildings boarded up, the other half reeking of rust and damp concrete. My heels clicked against the cracked pavement as I approached a flickering street lamp. A figure stepped out of the shadows, a woman, tall, with that same platinum blonde hair from the photo. She looked me over, a smirk curling on her lips. "So, you're the wife," she said, as if tasting the words. My stomach tightened. "And you're the mistress?" She laughed, low, almost pitying. "Oh, honey, that's too small a word for what I am." From her bag, she pulled out a folder and handed it to me. My name was on some of the documents. My husband's was on all of them. Bank transfers, offshore accounts, fake IDs, photos of him with different women in different cities under different names. "He's not just cheating on you," she said. "He's living 3 different lives, and you're funding at least 2 of them." I flipped through the pages, my pulse hammering. "Why are you telling me this?" Her smirk faded into something sharper. "Because he burned me too. And now, I want him to burn." She stepped closer, her perfume cloying, her eyes cold. "But if you want in on this, you'll have to decide fast. He's already making plans to disappear. Tonight." Before I could answer, the sound of tires screeched nearby. A black SUV rolled to a stop, and a door flew open. David stepped out. David's eyes locked on mine first, shock, then pure venom. "What the hell are you doing here?" he barked, slamming the car door. The blonde didn't flinch. "Relax, lover. We were just getting acquainted." He shot her a glare sharp enough to cut steel, then turned back to me. "You need to go home. Now." I folded my arms, clutching the folder tight. "Home? You mean the house you paid for with my money? The house you'll abandon when you run off to your next identity?" His jaw twitched. "You have no idea what you're talking about." The mistress chuckled darkly. "Oh, she knows, David. She knows everything. I made sure of it." He advanced toward her. "You think you're clever? You're signing your own death warrant." Something in his tone, low, dangerous, made my blood run cold. But the blonde didn't back down. Instead, she pulled out her phone and waved it. One press of this button, and the police get every file, every account, every alias. And guess what? Your darling wife gets a copy too. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the street lamp above us. Then David's mask cracked, rage and desperation bleeding through. "You're both making a mistake," he hissed. "You don't know the people I work with. They'll destroy you." I stepped forward, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. "Then maybe it's time they met me." David's expression shifted, just for a heartbeat, into something I couldn't read. Fear? Respect? Before I could decide, headlights flared from the opposite end of the street, and a second car began speeding toward us. The car screeched to a halt inches from us. Two men in dark suits stepped out, their faces unreadable, movements sharp and deliberate. David straightened instantly, his whole demeanor shifting, like a soldier falling into rank. One of the men nodded toward me. "Is this her?" David hesitated, then forced a cold smile. "Yes, and she's leaving." The mistress slid closer to me, her phone still in hand. "Not a chance. You make one wrong move, and everything goes public." The taller man pulled something from his coat, papers. He handed them to David without a word. David glanced over them, then looked at me, his voice icy. "Sign these, and you'll never hear from me again." I took the papers. They were divorce documents, but laced with clauses designed to strip me of everything. My house, my accounts, even my legal right to testify about his business. I smiled. "No." David's jaw clenched. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I cut in. "I have enough proof to bury you, David. The accounts, the transactions, the property in another woman's name. And I've already handed copies to my lawyer and the press." The mistress grinned, and I sent my little package to a detective friend. He's probably reading it right now. For the first time, David's composure broke entirely. The men in suits exchanged a look, then one muttered, "She's not worth the heat. Walk away." David's glare could have burned through concrete, but he stepped back. As he slid into the car, I called out, "One more thing. Check tomorrow's headlines." The next morning, his entire empire unraveled. Public arrests, frozen accounts, and his name dragged through every news outlet. For the first time since discovering his secret life, I felt free. Not just from him, but from the fear he'd built around me. And my perfect revenge? Watching him lose everything while I walked away with my head high.